All right, so like you guys seen the board, we're going to be talking about gun violence and how the U.S. government can step in to handle the widespread proliferation and misuse of firearms. So, like many of the people in this room, probably, I grew up American. I grew up doing very American things. I went to church on Sundays, watched football right after, went to barbecues, all that stuff. But something else that is also uniquely American is our relationship with gun violence, right? In terms of mass shootings, according to an international journal of comparative and applied criminal justice, over the past 25 years, the top 5 countries with the most mass shootings are Finland with 3, Canada with 4, Germany with 5, France with 8, and America with over 100. That's quite a lot, but it's not just mass shootings that we have problems with. We also have a huge gun violence issue with relates to how it relates to suicide, right? According to a Pew Research journal, over half of all gun violence in the United States is due to suicides. That's 25,000 people each year that kill themselves with guns. So it's not just a violence issue either. It's also, there can be loopholes. There's something called the gun show loophole, where if you go into a gun show, you could be absolutely mentally deranged. You can still buy a firearm because you're not required to have a background check to get a gun, like at a gun shop or any other place where you can responsibly purchase a firearm. So there's obviously a big problem with how we buy and use firearms in this country. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. There's a lot of different opinions people have. Gun violence, Second Amendment, it's a hugely controversial topic. So I'm going to be asking the different researched opinions of Adam, Landry, and William about what the U.S. government can do to step in to lower the proliferation and misuse of firearms to increase public safety and decrease gun violence. Starting with Adam.
Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm here to talk about my opinion on what the government can do with firearms. And I think it comes down to 3 main things. How does the Second Amendment fit in with it? Who's handling the firearms in the situation? And, what crime is being committed when the firearm is being used? For a lot of times, people in this country are persecuted for their self-defense of their property and or them or a loved one. That is something that is protected by the Second Amendment, yet people in this country are still persecuted in that fashion. However, we do need to look at what context is being committed. We need to understand that firearms are going to be out there, and there's no law or bill that we're going to pass that's going to magically get guns off the street. A statistic ran by the U.S. government in 2018 said that for every American, there's at least 3 guns in America. So we're not really going to be able to take the guns away. What we need to do is we need to educate everybody, and we need to teach people about gun safety and how to protect each other with guns, and when people are, crazy, because that's just what happens, how you can be safe and get out of harm's way. Something that the government is doing right now, they're running background checks. In December 2023, 1.7 million gun checks were done, which represents a 23% increase in gun checks from the year before. And that was done by the NRA. We would like to treat violence with gun violence with education, and overall hold everyone together and educate each other on the benefits of guns in the safe environment and uphold law. We can lower crime and,
Cool. Yeah.
make everyone safer.
Adams was mainly to do with education, right? There was some other stuff in there with more background checks, and I think Landry's point is pretty similar, but hers is more about licensing. So do you want to tell everybody about your point?
I believe that the U.S. government can handle the widespread proliferation and misuse of firearms by requiring individuals who would like to own and carry a gun to complete training and a test, similar to how we obtain a driver's license. A vital part of combating this issue is making a countrywide law instead of allowing individual states to create their own varying laws and regulations of firearms or lack thereof. While the Second Amendment states that people have the right to keep and bear arms, our society has changed since firearms were principally used for military and public defense. As time changes, we must be adaptive in all aspects to prioritize the safety of our citizens. It's no secret that gun-related violence has been prominent in our society. According to Pew Research Center, like John mentioned, about 8 in 10 U.S. murders in 2021 involved a firearm, and additionally, more than half of all suicides in 2021 also involved a gun, making that the highest percentage since 2001. In my statement, I'm not suggesting the U.S. to ban firearms altogether, but instead ensure that the people obtaining them are well educated and are using them for safe and valid reasons. A driver's license ensures that we have the competency and knowledge of vehicle and traffic laws, and a firearm license implemented across the United States would establish the same guidelines. Some states enforce firearm licensing laws that include in-person applications, fingerprinting, completion of safety courses, and enhanced background checks. According to researchers from the Johns Hopkins University from the Educational Fund to Stop Gun Violence, Connecticut's 1995 handgun licensing law was associated with a 28% reduction in the state's homicide rate, and a 33% reduction in the state's firearm suicide rate from 1996 to 2017. On the other hand, the 2007 repeal of the Missouri's firearm licensing is linked to a 25% increase in the annual firearm homicide rate during the first 3 years after the repeal. This is why going forward, the U.S. government should implement a countrywide firearm license requirement that includes firearm education courses and application and enhanced background checks.
Cool. Well, thank you guys. You guys both really focused on education. Williams, I understand, is a little more putting the responsibility on people around the buyer, right? So if you want to talk about red flag laws.
So I think it's really important that we take guns away from people who are an active danger to other people, so we can keep Americans protected in American communities well. And we can accomplish this with extreme risk protection laws, otherwise known as red flag laws. These allow police officers or family members to petition a judge at a court to issue an injunction that allows for the removal of the firearms from the person considered dangerous. According to the Guardian, and this means that you have to go to a judge and then actually provide evidence that the person you're trying to get the guns from is in active danger, and then the judge will decide whether or not the guns should be removed. And the laws are really effective at what they do, as according to Everytime Research and Policy, after Connecticut introduced its enforcement of the extreme risk laws, a study found that the law was associated with a 14% decrease in the state's firearm suicide rate. Unfortunately, not all states have these laws. Out of the 50 states in our nation, only 21 states, alongside with DC, have any sort of law mandating the removal of guns from people who can be considered a danger to others or themselves. Introducing these red flag laws in every state in the nation, or a federal red flag law, would allow for the protection of all Americans and decrease the total gun violence throughout the United States.
All right, cool. So 3 pretty different solutions. I wrote down some questions. If you guys don't have anything you want to say to each other, we can jump right into those.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm glad that both Landry and William, and by virtue of yours, since you were also education, all talked about suicide. Suicide was one of the 3 problems that I brought up that really defines the greater problem of gun violence. So William, you mentioned that your solution had a 14% decrease in suicides, while Landry's, and by virtue Adam's solution, had a 33% decrease in suicides. Why do you guys think that there's a greater decrease in suicides for education versus red flag laws? Is it just harder to see with red flag laws? Is education, are there more steps? It makes people think through stuff? What do you guys think? What do you think, Landry?
I would say that education requires more thought process, and it takes longer time, so it requires more of people's attention, which is sometimes harder to give, especially if people truly don't care, and they're not interested in getting educated about firearms and the safety, because a lot of times people are just ready to go, and they don't want to meet other people's regulations, and that's just kind of an American thing with all things, not just like the use of firearms, and so I would say that difference, even though education makes a bigger impact, it's still gonna be more dreadful for people to go about.
I want to say that education is more of a reactive thing than compared to red flag laws. Red flag laws are entirely reactive. You have to see that this person is actually a danger to themselves, and
Yeah.
you have to go through the whole process of getting the guns removed from the person. Instead of education, you can stop it a lot earlier.
Yeah.
And as you're educating the people for it, and the actual violence can take place.
Yeah, that's actually a very good place to like make that point, because not everybody that's struggling with, you know, suicidal tendencies is really, you know, showing it.
Mhm.
And also like going to a judge. I don't know if you guys have ever had to go to a judge for anything ever, but it takes forever. And you know, sometimes with people that are struggling with intense mental illness, you don't have that time. So what about you, Adam? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think, you know, in that sense of, you know, going to the judge, I feel like, you know, a lot of people that are handling guns in that sense of violent nature, crime, or, you know, even just suicide, have a lot of, you know, mental stress. So I think where we could benefit from is, you know, we say the red flag laws. We see, you know, signs of, you know, self-harm, you know, where can we educate, where can we put programs to work, where can we get a mentor in there? And I think that just comes into where you're at, what environment you put yourself in, and kind of just like as a, you know, world at large, we just need to kind of open our eyes and look and, you know, see what we can see.
I got you. And I thought it was interesting that you brought up mentors and stuff, because while Landry's was very much about licensing and the education that's surrounding licensing, bringing up mentors is something that I personally didn't think about. Are there other ways to educate people about gun violence that maybe wouldn't be through the government? Maybe it would just be, you know, some sort of nonprofit thing that people are doing.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I was taught gun safety through my family, so I'd handled guns here and there, and I feel like that definitely had a very, you know, good perspective on me. You know, I understand that, you know, guns are dangerous. People have them. People can do whatever they want with them. It just takes one little accident, and I think that in a lot of sense, you know, where people are not educated in the sense of gun violence, and they don't actually see the effects of it, and they just are careless, I feel like is where we lack.
I got you. Cool.
I would say with that, I think, like what Adam said, everyone's upbringing is different, and some people use guns to hunt, some people that's strictly
Definitely,
their use of protection, and I think maybe even implementing, even though it could get political, implementing some sort of like gun safety program into like the school system, because obviously everyone's required to go to school, required to get that background so everyone's kind of on the same page, because you know, what you learn about guns, your exposure to them is totally different across the United States, within even different communities.
That's very real. I grew up in the country for some of my life, and during that time, I had the opportunity to shoot for 4-H. That's where I got a lot of my, education surrounding guns. And I know that a lot of people in the inner city, they don't necessarily have that opportunity. All they see is with guns is like, oh, somebody's gonna like attack me. I'm gonna have to use this. It's not like, there's a lot of, it's very situationally based. So yeah, I think education is a great example for all that stuff. I do have one more question, but how are we on time?
I think you are on time actually.
We're on time?
Yeah, so
Okay.
now we just need to ask our audience if they have any suggestion or any questions for our dear panelists here.
Yeah, you guys have any questions? What's your question?
On the education aspect, recently on the news, there's been news that how children are now being able to like reach guns through their family household. How would education tackle that issue?
That's a good question. Adam, did you grow up with, like, you know, being a
Well,
household?
I think, you know, we look at education and security of guns. Where children are accessing the guns, I feel like that comes with immaturity and lack of education on the parents' part. I understand that, you know, where children are grabbing, you know, the guns and committing violent school shootings and whatnot, that is a different aspect. But I feel like that also has, you know, where the parents need to educate. The parents need to be understanding what's going on with my kid, because I feel like, you know, there are definitely some warning signs. Your kid doesn't go from nothing to, I'm gonna start taking your guns, you know. So I think that comes to education in the parents' part, and also just, you know, being around guns is what experience is where you see it. If you're just sheltering yourself, you're not hearing it, you're not, you know, seeing the nature of other, you know, mentors with the maturity of holding it, you know, that gives you an intelligence and definitely just education overall about, what to do and how to manage, control of it.
I think that part of, in the education aspect is you have to educate the parents on proper gun storage. And I've seen a lot of people who will just leave a firearm in the drawer of their nightstand. And as such, you have children just waltzing into their parents' rooms and then just picking the gun out of the nightstand and then just go running off with it. And it's, a lot of people just don't know how to properly store their firearms. You gotta put it in you gotta actually get a safe for it and actually keep it locked away and hidden somewhere only where you know, in order to actually keep a library to your children. Because kids are rather very punctual. And if they want to find something, they will, but you have to try to work really hard in order to get the guns away from the kids and make sure that they're out of reach.
Solid.
All right, so I think we are pretty much done with this book. Thank you so much for. Thank you so much for this.
As a conclusion, I hope you guys liked
Thank you
what we
so
did
much.
so far. Likewise, sorry about that.